The Hawaiian language, as we know it today, was put into written form for the first time by Christian missionaries who came from Boston. Hawaiian was an oral language with a great many differences in it, but one of the first things the missionaries did when they came here in 1820 was to start learning the language and put it together in a way that they could teach people to read and write, primarily so they could write, but mainly so they could read the Bible. But they did teach everyone how to read and write, and they developed primers. But what I want to talk about first are the earliest dictionaries, and some of the later ones too. This is the first real dictionary that was ever published, and this is by a missionary named Loren Andrews, Reverend Loren Andrews. And this was published in 1865. This is not an original copy, this is a reprint, but it's a reprint of that original dictionary, complete. If anybody is familiar with Max Freedom Long, who wrote some things and taught about his version of Huna, one of the philosophies, the esoteric philosophy of Hawaii, why this is the dictionary that he used. And this is the one that he copied parts of for some of his books. It, as far as a dictionary goes, it was a good first attempt, but it isn't terribly large, and it's been determined that there were a lot of errors, and there were no pronunciation marks, but it was the best thing available for quite a while. What I'd like to do is just take one word to show how the language has developed over the years. The word I'm going to look at here, I figured, what the heck, let's look at the word Huna. One of the interesting things about this dictionary, by the way, is a very detailed chronology of Hawaiian events that it has in the back. Some of the dates are even before the arrival of Captain Cook, and although he puts down very specific dates, I got to tell you, those dates are guesswork, because none of the Hawaiians had any dates for anything before Captain Cook arrived, and the Westerners started using dates. At any rate, it has that in it, which is very interesting. And let's look at this one word, what he has to say about Huna. The first thing he says is Huna, to hide, to conceal, and to keep from sight or knowledge of another, to keep back truth in speaking, to hide as a trap or a snare, to hide, to conceal, to disguise oneself, to protect, to defend, to conceal as knowledge or wisdom. What we know now is that he's not talking about the word Huna. He's talking about the verb Huna, and it's different. It very definitely means to conceal. Okay? He goes on then, for a basic meaning of Huna, just Huna, which is to be small, to be little, to be reduced fine as powder. Something very hard, fine and hard to see. It's one of the basic meanings. And that which is concealed, whether it's the private parts of the body or esoteric knowledge. Okay? So anyway, that's what he has to say about Huna. The next dictionary to become available was first published in 1954. And it had some later incarnations into the 70s, maybe the early 80s. See what it says about that? Nope. The last one of this would have been, the third edition of this one was 1965. And this is the Hawaiian English Dictionary, and this is the only one that was available after Loren Andrews' dictionary and before the next really updated edition of this. This is an interesting dictionary because it has some things we don't find in the dictionary anymore. One is a glossary of Hawaiian gods and goddesses, which is very interesting. And the other one is a There's some curiosity in Hawaiian. They have, when they talk about the gods and goddesses, different forms that the gods and goddesses can take. And it has a list of those forms for a number of the gods and goddesses. Some can turn into fish, and others into trees, and others into different animals or clouds. And it has a whole list of that in the dictionary. But the word Huna in this one is just a little different. It starts off with the first meaning is minute, particle, grain, crumb, gram, small, little, powdery. Okay, so you get all of that meaning in there. And something which is hidden or secret. And it does give Huna as meaning to hide something. And that's basically all it has. It has some other meanings about to hide in secret, like to hide the body of a loved one in a secret cave. That's Hunakele, and a few other compound words that have to do with it. Okay. Interestingly, the most of the time when Huna is used in front of a word, it has the meaning of small. Not always. And when it's used after, it has the meaning of hidden, but not always. That's one of the wonders of learning Hawaiian. Okay? And so that's the one in here. Then we come to the newest edition of the Hawaiian Dictionary. By the way, this is mainly by Mary Kavenapukui, an extremely wise and knowledgeable Hawaiian woman. And another Hawaiian, although his name isn't Hawaiian, Samuel H. Elbert, who was her partner in gathering information about Hawaiian culture and putting the dictionary together. This doesn't have any lists of god and goddesses, doesn't have any of their bodies. It's just a straight-out dictionary with more words than any other dictionary has ever had. Okay? The only thing different about the word Huna in this one is, let's see where we get the word here. Here we go. Almost the same, except it adds a few things. Speck, tiny bit, scrap, to the other words that were mentioned. And said it usually follows, when it means hidden or secret, usually follows nouns. You know, it says that. So it just has a few little things in there. Let's see, common fine red seaweeds. And in the original it said something about the seaweeds made a good gelatin. This version says it makes a good colloid. Because this is modern, we use fancy words now. You know, gelatin is not fancy enough. Okay, that's this dictionary. Just showing you some of the differences. In 1986 and 7, however, around in the 70s especially, Hawaiian was almost dead as a language. There were very, very few native speakers left. Then there started to be a Hawaiian Renaissance. And so in the mid-80s, little over the mid-80s, they got together a lexicon group, it was called, of Hawaiian elders who were fluent in the language as their native language. And this council, this group got together and began forming words to create a new dictionary to keep Hawaiian up with the modern world. And published in 1998, Mamakakayo, which has the meaning of carrying something forward into the dawn of a new era. That's basically the meaning of that. And they have done a number of ways. Wherever possible, they've used extended meanings of existing Hawaiian words. And then once in a while, using roots, why they have created new words that are somehow related to the concept that they're bringing into the language. And then on occasion, when necessary, they use what's called a transliteration, which is an Hawaiianized version of an English word. For instance, they do that a lot you hear some of what people think are Hawaiian names like Kimo, which is actually Jim, because there's no J in Hawaiian. And they always have to end in a vowel. So the name Kimo is really Jim. Keoki is George. Okay? And, there's Keoni is John. So, there's a lot of transliteration done when necessary. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and I think you'll find it interesting what we find as a meaning of the word Huna. In modern Hawaiian, or at least an extended meaning, it means a particle, as in an atom. It means Huna is the word for a bit, as in a computer bit. Okay? It's a biological cell. It's actually Huna Ola, which means life secret or hidden life, or small life, would be better. Tissue as a structural material of a plant or an animal. The word Huna is used for that. And my favorite is coming up here. Oh, come on. Somewhere in here is a meaning. I know it's here because I read it. Anyway, it means an alien. For some reason I cannot fathom. But that's one of the meanings of it. Okay? So we've really gone a long way from some of the original concepts, except for the idea of something very tiny, small, and hard to see. And that's the esoteric knowledge, too. It's not kept hidden, it's just hard to see. So, a little bit about the evolution of the language.